The Galactic Concorde's judgment spire hung in the void like a shard of frozen lightning. It was not built. It was grown, shaped over millennia by the oldest minds in the galaxy. Around it, stars burned cold and distant. Inside, silence ruled, heavier than stone. On the central dais, 3 humans stood alone. Ambassador Rael Voss adjusted his tattered coat. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp. Beside him, Lieutenant Kira Marin stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore no armor, only the faded blue uniform of Earth's last diplomatic corps. Behind them, a sealed cryopod hummed softly, its surface frosted over, untouched for decades. Above them, the Council of 7 Spheres watched from towering thrones made of living crystal. Each delegate represented a civilization older than human history. Their forms varied. Some floated like clouds of light, others had too many limbs or eyes that blinked in strange rhythms. None spoke aloud. Their voices came as thoughts, sharp and cold, projected directly into the minds of those below. Species Homo sapiens, came the unified judgment, echoing through the chamber like a death knell. Your record is sealed. Your actions, chaotic, emotional, unpredictable, have endangered galactic stability. You wage war over ideas. You build wonders and then destroy them for pride. You weep for strangers and kill for belief. You are a flaw in the design of rational order. Rael did not flinch. He had heard this before. Countless times. Ever since Earth's fleet was shattered in the Battle of Proxima, ever since the last colony fell silent, the conquered had circled like vultures waiting for the final breath. The charge is memory contamination, the Council continued. Your stories spread like virus. Your songs infect young minds. Your art makes others question logic. This cannot be allowed. The sentence is memory purge. All records of humanity will be erased. Your planet will be quarantined. Your species, forgotten. Kira's jaw tightened. She knew what memory purge meant. Not death, worse. To vanish from history as if never existed. No songs, no names, no graves. Just empty silence where a civilization once laughed, loved, and dreamed. Rael stepped forward. We request final testimony. A ripple passed through the Council. Final words were a human custom, illogical. But the conquered allowed it, out of curiosity or perhaps pity. Before Rael could speak, the cryopod behind them hissed. Steam curled into the air. The lid slid open with a soft sigh. All eyes turned. A young woman sat up slowly, barefoot, pale. Her dark hair clung to her damp forehead. She wore a simple white shift, the kind used in old medical labs. Her eyes were closed. She had been asleep for 87 years. Her name was Elira. No one moved. No alarm sounded. The conquered sensors should have flagged her revival instantly, but they didn't. It was as if the universe itself held its breath. Then, her eyelids fluttered open. Not with fear. Not with confusion. With quiet recognition. The moment her eyes met the chamber, everything changed. The lights in the spire dimmed, then brightened in a slow, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. The floor beneath the Council's thrones trembled, not from force but from resonance. A low hum filled the air, too deep to hear but felt in the bones. The lead arbiter, a towering being of folded silver skin and 7 glowing eyes, staggered. His thoughts, usually sharp as diamond blades, blurred. He clutched his head. What is this frequency? Then he collapsed, not from injury, from overload. His mind, ancient and vast, had just brushed against something it could not process. Not data, not energy, not even consciousness as they understood it. It was meaning. Raw, unfiltered human meaning, carried in a single glance. Alarms finally blared. Red glyphs flashed across the walls. The chamber's AI, calm and neutral until now, spoke in a voice laced with static. Temporal anomaly detected. For human subject Elira 7. Origin Earth, classification unknown. Threat level, re-evaluating. Kira stared at Elira, stunned. She had read the files. Elira wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a diplomat. She was part of Project Lumen, a secret Earth initiative buried deep beneath the Andes. Scientists had tried to map the human mind's connection to the fabric of space itself. Most called it madness, but in the final days of the war, Earth had stopped building weapons. They started building bridges between thought, time, and the silent song of the cosmos. Alira stood. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. As she took her first step onto the obsidian floor, the very air bent around her. The Council's enforcers, armored in black alloy, trained to kill gods, raised their weapons, but their targeting systems flickered and died. Their armor plates vibrated, then stilled as if bowing. Rael watched, heart pounding. He remembered the last message from Earth's president before the comms went dark. If they come to erase us, send her. She is not our weapon. She is our witness. Now the witness walked, Alira moved toward the fallen arbiter. She knelt beside him, not with pity but with sorrow. She placed a hand on his silver brow. Images flooded his mind, not in words but in feeling. A child's hand in rain. A mother humming to a baby. A soldier writing a letter he knew he'd never send. A painter staring at a sunset, tears in his eyes because beauty hurt too much to hold. The arbiter gasped. His 7 eyes widened. This is not logic, he whispered aloud. The first time in centuries he had used spoken sound. This is love. The other delegates recoiled. Love was a myth, a chemical glitch. Not a force, but here it was, standing barefoot in their perfect chamber. Outside the spire, the human transport ship, small, scarred, barely spaceworthy, suddenly lit up. Its engines, long dead, glowed with soft blue light, not from power cells, from something deeper. Back on Earth, buried beneath the ruins of Geneva, a vault opened. Dust fell from ancient servers. A single phrase pulsed across every dead satellite, every silent radio tower, every broken screen. We did not hide. We waited. The Concord's war fleet, stationed at the edge of the system, received the signal. Their commanders ordered immediate silence. But the message repeated not as data, but as a melody. A lullaby Earth mothers once sang. Panic spread through the alien ranks. Inside the chamber, Alira rose. She looked up at the highest throne, the seat of the Supreme Arbiter, who had not yet spoken. You want to forget us, she said, her voice quiet but clear, carrying through the vast hall without amplification. But forgetting is the true death, and we remember everything. The Supreme Arbiter leaned forward. His form shifted like smoke. You are one girl, he projected, his thoughts edged with fear. What can you do against the will of 7 empires? Alira smiled faintly. I don't have to do anything. You already felt it. That's why you're afraid. She turned and walked back to Rael and Kira. As she passed, the cryopod behind her dissolved into shimmering dust. The chamber fell silent again, but this silence was different. It was full of questions. The AI spoke once more, its voice changed, softer. Warning.
Memory purge protocol.
Incompatible with observed reality. Recommend suspension of sentence, the council stirred. Whispers of doubt spread like fire, but the Supreme Arbiter's eyes narrowed. His decision was not yet made. Outside, the stars watched, and somewhere, deep in the heart of a quiet planet called Earth, something ancient began to wake. Alira did not speak again as she walked with Rael and Kira through the silent corridors of the Judgment Spire. The alien guards who once stood rigid now stepped aside without orders. Their weapons hung low. Something in the air had changed, not power but presence. Like walking through a forest after rain, everything felt sharper, clearer, alive. Back in the observation lounge, the human transport ship floated like a forgotten toy. But its hull no longer showed battle scars. The metal shimmered faintly, as if remembering it had once carried hope instead of fear. Inside, the ship's AI, named simply Echo, spoke in a voice that sounded almost human. Welcome back, Alira. Systems are realigning. Rael watched her carefully. What are you? He asked, not with suspicion but wonder. Alira looked out the viewport at the distant stars. I'm what Earth built when it stopped fighting, she said. Not a weapon. A listener. Long ago, while other worlds forged plasma cannons and gravity bombs, Earth's last scientists had asked a different question. What if the universe isn't just matter and energy, but meaning? They built neural arrays tuned to the quiet hum between atoms, the echo of light across time. Alira's mind had been trained from childhood to hear that hum. She didn't control it. She harmonized with it, and now awake, she was no longer just a girl. She was a tuning fork for reality. Outside, the Concord's war fleet, hundreds of dreadnoughts shaped like obsidian teeth, began to move. The Supreme Arbiter had given the order, scour Sol system. leave no memory behind. But as the first ship jumped toward Earth, something went wrong. It did not emerge in orbit. It appeared inside a small, sunlit room. Wooden floor. A chalkboard with math equations half erased. A window showing a blue sky with cotton clouds. On the desk sat a paper with a child's drawing. 8 planets, a smiling sun, and a tiny rocket labeled "To Mars." The alien captain stared, confused. His sensors screamed error. This place did not exist in any database. Yet here he was, trapped in a memory. One by one, the fleet vanished from real space and reappeared inside fragments of human history. A battleship materialized in the middle of a 20th century dance hall, its crew watching ghostly couples waltz to silent music. Another found itself floating above a wheat field at dawn, where an old man whispered to the wind, "Grow strong, boy." These were not illusions. They were mnemonic constructs, realities shaped by human memory, woven into the fabric of spacetime by Earth's last defense. Back on Earth, beneath the ruins of Geneva, the vault pulsed again. Dust fell from ceiling beams as ancient servers whirred to life. Project Namasan, the moon archive, had activated. Every story, every song, every tear shed on Earth was now encoded into the planet's quantum field. And Elira was its voice. The Council panicked. They sent the Vorthax enforcers, elite warriors clad in null matter armor that could phase through stars. They boarded the human ship without warning, blades humming with anti-reality energy. Kira raised her sidearm, but Elira stopped her with a gentle hand. The lead enforcer stepped forward, towering over Elira. "You will be silenced," he projected. Elira looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, just understanding. And in that look, the enforcer saw his own childhood, on a world he had not thought of in 500 years. He saw his mother's hands weaving light into cloth. He heard her voice singing a lullaby in a language long dead. His armor cracked, not from force, but from grief. The null matter unraveled into silver dust that floated like snow. The other enforcers dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by memories they didn't know they carried. Rael whispered, "They're feeling what it means to be mortal." Elira nodded. Everyone forgets, but no one truly forgets. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, strange things happened. A Kale Dominion philosopher known for his cold logic began writing poetry about rain. A hive mind trader canceled a war contract because the numbers felt sad. On a mining moon, workers stopped their drills and simply sat together, sharing stories of home, something they hadn't done in generations. Humanity's greatest weapon was not fire or steel, it was empathy. And now, it was spreading. But the Supreme Arbiter would not yield. From his throne, he activated the Silent Protocol, a forbidden tool older than the Concord itself. It did not kill the body. It erased the mind's ability to remember, to feel, to connect. It turned living beings into empty shells. Its target? Elira. A beam of pure void shot from the spire's core, faster than light, colder than death. It struck, but Earth's moon blinked. Not metaphorically, literally. The gray surface shimmered for a fraction of a second, like an eye closing and opening. The beam did not vanish. It was absorbed, and then it returned, not as destruction, but as a wave of pure memory. Every being in the galaxy, from the highest counselor to the lowliest maintenance drone, suddenly remembered something human, a taste of bread, the sound of a first laugh, the weight of a hand held in the dark. The Supreme Arbiter screamed, not in pain but in shock. He remembered holding his child's hand as a meteor shower lit the sky. He had buried that memory centuries ago, calling it weakness. Now it flooded back. Tears, real, liquid tears, rolled down his smoky face. On the human ship, Elira closed her eyes. She felt the wave ripple outward, touching every mind, stitching something broken back together. Kira looked at her. "What happens now?" Elira opened her eyes. They glowed faintly, like distant stars. "Now," she said, "they remember why forgetting is the real end." But the Supreme Arbiter was not done. Alone in his chamber, trembling, he made a final choice. If he could not erase humanity, he would erase everything. He triggered the Concord's self-destruct sequence, a failsafe designed to collapse the spire into a micro-singularity, taking the entire system with it. Lights flickered red. Alarms wailed in languages no one had spoken in millennia. The core began to destabilize. Energy coiled inward, hungry and dark. Rael grabbed Illyra's arm. "We have to go." But Illyra stood still. She looked toward Earth as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Then she smiled. "Earth isn't just a planet," she said softly. "It's a promise." And as the spire began to tear itself apart, the stars above Earth pulsed once like a heartbeat answering a call. The spire shook. Cracks ran through its crystal walls like veins of lightning. The self-destruct sequence was unstoppable, designed to erase not just the Concord but the very memory of its existence. Outside, the fleet hung frozen in human memories, lost in lullabies and old photographs. Inside, panic spread like fire through dry grass, but Illyra did not run. She stood at the viewport of the human ship, her bare feet planted on the cool metal floor. Her eyes were closed, but her face was calm. She was listening, not to alarms or voices, but to something deeper. The hum beneath all things. The quiet song Earth had taught her to hear. Rael shouted over the rising noise. "We have minutes. The jump drive is barely holding." Kira checked the controls. No signal from Earth, no help coming. Illyra opened her eyes. "Help isn't coming," she said. "It's already here." Then she stepped forward, not toward the escape pods, but toward the airlock. "Illyra, no," Kira yelled, but the door slid open on its own. Not by command, by invitation. Illyra walked into the void, no suit, no tether, just her thin white shift and bare skin against the endless dark. Rael and Kira watched in horror, until they saw it. She did not float. She stood as if on solid ground. Around her, space bent, not with gravity but with meaning. The stars above Earth brightened not in power but in recognition. And from the planet below a soft golden light rose like breath from a sleeping giant. The moon pulsed again. This time, it did not just blink. It spoke not in words but in feeling. A wave of memory so vast it made galaxies seem small. Every human who ever lived, every farmer, poet, child, soldier, had left a mark on Earth's soul. And now that soul was awake. The Concord's self-destruct core began to collapse inward, pulling light, time, and thought into its center. But as it did, Earth's light met it not with force, but with story. The singularity did not explode. It unfolded, like a book opening. Suddenly, the entire Judgment Spire and everyone inside was no longer in space. They stood in a field of tall grass under a summer sky. Fireflies drifted in the warm air. In the distance, a small house with a red roof smoked gently from its chimney. A memory. But real. The Supreme Arbiter stumbled, his smoky form flickering. He looked at his hands, now shaped like human hands, wrinkled and old. He smelled bread baking, heard a dog bark, felt the sun on his skin. This is not possible," he whispered. Illyra appeared beside him, still barefoot, still calm. "You tried to erase us," she said. "But you can't erase a feeling. You can only forget it, and forgetting is a choice." Around them, the other council members wandered dazed. The Kale philosopher sat on a tree stump, crying as he remembered teaching his daughter to tie her shoes. The Vorthax enforcer knelt by a creek, watching minnows dart between stones, just like he had as a boy before war took his world. This was not a prison. It was a mirror. Earth had not built a weapon. It had built a classroom. Back on the human ship, Rael and Kira found themselves standing in a quiet library. Books lined the walls, their spines cracked with age. A single lamp glowed on a wooden desk. On it lay a journal open to a page that read, "We are not strong because we win. We are strong because we keep trying even when we lose." Kira touched the page. This was my grandfather's handwriting. Rael nodded. Earth didn't just save itself. It saved what matters. Outside the memory field, the real universe held its breath. The Concord's war fleet still floated in their own private echoes. Some laughing, some weeping, all changed. The silent protocol's beam had backfired. Instead of erasing memory, it had awakened it. But the Supreme Arbiter was not ready to surrender. He clenched his new human hands. "This is trickery," he growled. "Emotion is weakness. Order is truth." Illyra looked at him gently. "Order without meaning is just silence. And silence is death." She raised her hand, not to strike, but to show. The sky above them shifted. The stars rearranged into constellations shaped like human faces, smiling, crying, dreaming. The wind carried voices. A mother singing, a scientist shouting, "Eureka!" A soldier whispering, "I'm sorry," before the end. "You think we are chaotic," Alira said. "But chaos is just order we haven't understood yet. We cry because we care. We fight because we love. We build because we hope. That is not weakness. That is courage." The Arbiter staggered back. His mind, trained for 10,000 years to value logic above all, was breaking under the weight of something deeper. Then, from the house with the red roof, a child stepped out. She was no older than 6, wearing a yellow dress and holding a dandelion. She walked straight to the Arbiter and offered him the flower. He stared at it.
What is this?
"A wish," the girl said. "You blow the seeds, and if you believe hard enough, it comes true." He took it. His hands trembled. He blew. The seeds scattered into the golden air, and as they floated away, each one turned into a tiny star. The Arbiter fell to his knees. Not in defeat. In awe. Alira turned to Rael and Kira, who now stood beside her. "The Conquered wanted to judge us," she said. "But judgment only works if you understand what you're judging. They didn't know us. Now they do." The memory field began to fade. The grass, the house, the sky, they softened like watercolors in rain, but the feeling remained. Back in the real spire, the self-destruct sequence halted. The core stabilized. The cracks in the walls sealed themselves, not with crystal, but with something that looked like woven light. The AI spoke, its voice now warm. "Memory purge protocol canceled. New designation. Humanity. Archivists of meaning." The council sat in stunned silence. Then, one by one, they rose, not to condemn, to learn. The Kale philosopher bowed to Alira. "Teach us," he said. The Vorthax enforcer removed his helmet, revealing a face lined with sorrow and hope. "Show us how to remember." Only the Supreme Arbiter remained seated. His eyes were closed. Tears still fell. Alira walked to him. She did not speak. She simply placed her hand on his shoulder. And in that touch, he saw Earth not as a threat, but as a home he never knew he missed. Outside, the stars burned brighter, and far below, on a quiet blue planet, the wind carried a single word across oceans and ruins and graves. Remember. The Judgment Spire no longer felt like a court. It felt like a school, or a temple, or maybe both. The air hummed with quiet questions instead of cold verdicts. Alien delegates who once spoke only in logic now sat in small circles, listening as Rael told stories of Earth, of farmers who sang to their crops, of engineers who built bridges just to connect 2 lonely towns, of children who shared their last piece of bread without being asked. Alira walked among them, not as a ruler but as a guide. She did not command. She showed. When a Vorthax warrior asked why humans cried at funerals, she took him to a memory of a jazz funeral in New Orleans, where grief and joy danced together in the street. Brass bands playing loud enough to wake the dead and send them smiling into the next world. The warrior wept, not from sadness but from wonder. But not all hearts were open. The Supreme Arbiter had not spoken since the memory field faded. He sat alone in his chamber, the door sealed. Inside, the walls flickered with old recordings. Centuries of galactic law, cold equations, endless debates about order and control. He watched them like a man rereading a will he no longer believed in. He had spent his life erasing chaos, but now he saw chaos was just life refusing to be still. Outside his door, Alira stood. She did not knock. She simply waited. After a long time, the door opened. The Arbiter looked older. His smoky form had thinned as if part of him had burned away. "Why do you spare me?" he asked. "I tried to unmake your world." "Because forgetting you would be the same as what you tried to do to us," Alira said. "And we don't do that. We remember, even the hard parts." He looked down. "I don't know how to be." This, she asked, soft, uncertain, human. She smiled. "You're not human. But you're alive. And that's enough." She turned to leave, but paused. "The moon remembers everything," she said. "Even the things we wish we could forget. That's how we learn." Then she walked away. Back on Earth, the ruins were changing, not rebuilt by machines, not restored by force, but healed by attention. In Tokyo, vines crept over broken skyscrapers, blooming with flowers no botanist had named. In Cairo, sand shifted to reveal ancient streets, now lit by soft lanterns powered by nothing but moonlight. In the Amazon, trees grew in patterns that spelled out old songs in their roots. Earth was waking up, not as a planet of war or industry, but as a living archive, and the moon watched. Buried beneath its gray dust, Project Mnemosyne pulsed gently. It was not a weapon. It was a library. Every human memory, every kiss, every mistake, every act of kindness was stored in quantum threads woven into lunar rock. The moon did not think. It remembered, and remembering it protected. But the conquered's fear had not vanished. Far away in the outer rings of the galaxy, a hidden faction called the Purifiers watched the spires change with horror. They believed emotion was a disease, and humanity was its carrier. They launched their own fleet, not to negotiate but to cleanse. Their ships were black and silent, shaped like knives. They carried no weapons that fired beams or missiles. Instead, they carried null seeds, devices that erased memory on contact. Where they landed, beings forgot their names. Cities turned into hollow shells. Love became a word with no meaning. Their first target, Earth. 3 null ships dropped from warp near the moon. Alarms did not sound. Earth had no defenses left, no fleets, no shields, but the moon blinked, and this time, it did more than remember. It answered. The first null ship fired its seed toward the Pacific Ocean. The device fell like a black raindrop, humming with anti-memory, but as it neared the surface, the ocean rose not in a wave but in a giant hand made of water, shaped by the collective dream of every sailor, swimmer, and child who ever played in the sea. It caught the seed gently like a parent catching a falling toy. Then the hand closed, the seed dissolved into light. The second ship aimed for the Sahara. Its seed fell toward the dunes, but the desert shifted. Sand became faces, thousands of them ancient and wise, whispering stories in forgotten tongues. The seed landed in an open palm carved from stone and crumbled into dust that bloomed into wildflowers. The third ship panicked. It turned to flee. But the moon glowed. A beam of silver light, soft, not sharp, touched the ship's hull. Not to destroy, to remind. Inside, the Purifier crew screamed as memories flooded them. Not human memories, their own. A mother's lullaby, a first sunrise, a friend's laugh. Things they had locked away, calling them weakness. One by one they wept. Their ship drifted, powerless, not from damage, but from feeling. Back at the spire, news of the attack spread. The council tensed. Old fears returned, but Elira stood before them. "They are afraid," she said. "Fear makes you want to erase what you don't understand. But we can show them. Not with force, with truth." She turned to the Arbiter. "Will you help us?" He looked at his hands, the human hands from the memory field. Then he nodded. "We will not fight," he said to the council. "We will witness. A new fleet formed, not of warships, but of transports. Scientists, artists, teachers from every world. They would go to Earth not to conquer, but to learn." As they prepared to leave, Elira stood on the observation deck watching the stars. Rael joined her. "Do you think they'll understand?" "They already do," she said. "They just forgot how to feel it." Kira came too, holding a small box. Inside was a seashell from Earth's last clean beach. "For the Arbiter," she said. A reminder that even broken things can hold beauty. Elira took it. "He'll keep it on his desk," she said. "And one day he'll tell his grandchildren where it came from." Far below, Earth breathed. The wind carried seeds across continents. Rivers sang old songs. Children, real children, born after the war, played in fields where bombs once fell. And the moon watched over them all, silent and full, holding every memory like a promise. But peace is never final. In the deepest dark, beyond the edge of known space, something older than the Concorde stirred. It had watched humanity's rise. It had seen the moon awaken, and it did not like reminders. It began to move, not with ships, with silence. A silence so deep, it could swallow stars, but that was a story for another time. For now, Earth lived and the universe remembered why. The silence came without warning, not the quiet of night or the hush of snow. This was deeper. It was the absence of echo, of memory, of meaning itself. Stars near the edge of known space dimmed, not because they died, but because something was drinking their light, their history, their song. The Concorde felt it first. Their oldest records flickered. Names vanished from archives. Songs turned to static. Even the Judgment Spire's walls grew cold, as if forgetting their own shape. Elira felt it in her bones. She stood on the beach where the Pacific met the land, bare feet in wet sand. The seashell Kira had given the Arbiter now rested in her palm, warm from the sun. Around her, children played, human and alien alike, building castles that looked like temples, rockets, and hearts, but her eyes were on the horizon. "He's coming," she said. Rael stood beside her, arms crossed. "Who?" "The one who taught the Conquered to fear us," Elira replied. "The first Forgetter. Long ago, before galaxies had names, there was a being born from the void between thoughts. It saw emotion as noise, memory as clutter. It believed the universe would be perfect if it were empty, clean, silent. It had whispered into the ears of empires for eons, urging them to erase, to purify, to forget. And now, it was coming for Earth, not with warships, not with weapons, with nothing, absolute nothing. The moon pulsed weakly. Project Mnemosyne strained, trying to hold every memory against the growing silence. But even the moon could not fight a force that fed on forgetting. The Arbiter arrived in a small shuttle alone. He wore no robes, no symbols of rank, just simple gray cloth. In his hand he held the seashell. "I felt it too," he said, voice rough. "Like a hole in my mind where my daughter's name used to be." Elira nodded. "He doesn't destroy. He unmakes. What can we do?" Kira asked, joining them. She carried no weapon, only a notebook filled with sketches of Earth's new flowers. Elira looked at the children playing in the sand. One alien child handed a human girl a smooth stone. The girl smiled and placed it on top of their castle. "We don't fight silence with noise," Elira said. "We fight it with story." She walked to the water's edge, closed her eyes, and began to speak, not loudly, not with power, just a simple story. Once there was a boy who was afraid of the dark. As she spoke, the words did not vanish into air. They became light, tiny points of gold that floated over the waves. The children stopped playing and gathered around her. The Arbiter sat in the sand. Rael and Kira listened, and the silence hesitated, because stories are harder to erase than stars. One by one, others joined. A Kale poet recited a verse about rain on metal rooftops. A Vortex warrior hummed a lullaby his grandmother once sang. A young human girl shared how she taught her dog to fetch sticks, even though the dog was gone now. Each memory, each word, each feeling became a thread of light. The threads wove together, not into a shield, into a net of meaning. Out in space, the darkness recoiled. Where the net touched, stars flickered back to life. Forgotten names returned to archives. Songs found their melodies again. The first Forgetter could not understand. It had erased civilizations with a thought. But this was not logic. This was love. And love does not vanish when ignored. It grows louder. Elira stepped into the water. The waves reached her knees. She raised her hands, not in defense but in offering. "Come," she said to the void. "See what you've been missing." The darkness paused. Then, slowly, it reached back, not to destroy, to touch. And in that touch, it felt something it had never known: loneliness. For the first time in eternity, the first Forgetter remembered what it was like to be forgotten. It shuddered. Then it wept. Not with tears, but with light. The darkness unraveled, not into nothing but into stars, new ones, bright and young, scattered across the sky like seeds. The silence was gone. In its place, a quiet full of possibility. Back on the beach, the children cheered. The alien boy hugged the human girl. The Arbiter clutched the seashell like a sacred thing. Rael looked at Elira. "Is it over?" She shook her head. "It's never over. But it's ours now." Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a promise kept, a memory honored, a home for all who chose to feel, to remember, to hope. The Concorde changed that day. They did not crown humanity as rulers. They named them keepers, the guardians of meaning in a universe that had almost forgotten how to care. Schools opened on Mars, on Titan, on distant worlds where children learned human songs alongside math and science. Museums displayed Earth's art not as relics but as living lessons. And every year, on the day the spire almost fell, Beings from across the galaxy gathered on that same beach to share one story each. Elira never left Earth. She walked its forests, its cities, its quiet places. She listened to the wind, the rivers, the laughter of children. She was not a goddess, not a weapon, just a girl who remembered how to listen. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple, a young alien child approached her. The child held out a seashell, small, pink, perfect. "For you," the child said. Elira took it, smiled. "Keep it," she said. "One day you'll understand why we collected them." The child blinked. "Why?" "Because shells hold the sound of the ocean," Elira said. "And the ocean holds the memory of every drop of rain that ever fell. And rain is the sky remembering the earth." The child tucked the shell into their pocket, eyes wide with wonder. Above them, the stars burned, not cold, not distant, but warm. Like eyes watching over a story they never wanted to end. And far away in the deepest quiet, the moon glowed softly, holding every memory, every tear, every laugh, every hope. Earth lived, not because it was strong, but because it refused to be forgotten. And the universe, at last, remembered how to hope.